Hi team, we run. Coach Alexa here, coach for Reading, South Oxfordshire and the internet. I'm going to talk today about GPS watches. This is my very long serving new strap sporting Garmin. Because lots and lots of people get very, very hung up. I think it's partially a runner thing because running is a very data-driven sport, right? It's all very clear information on your performance in a way that you wouldn't really get from something like football because there's a lot of sort of skill elements involved. But with running, time, distance, speed, elevation, all of these stats are really easy to get quite into. So I just wanted to give a bit of background as to the accuracy of GPS. And I guess the headline takeaway is GPS is not 100% accurate. So a little bit of, I don't know, geeky techery behind this video. GPS actually stands for one of now many positioning systems. So GPS is a global positioning system. It's the American system. It's the first system that was put into space. And I say that because all of these positioning systems run off satellites in the sky. And what they do is that they triangulate your position. So you need, the reason it's called triangulate is because you need a minimum of 3 satellites up in the sky, and it calculates rather cleverly how far you are from those 3 different satellites, and back into sort of geometry at school, if you know exactly how long those 3 pins are and how far up those satellites are, you can triangulate that to work out exactly where you are on the surface of the planet. So GPS, the Global Positioning System, is the original, and it's worth knowing about that system. It was originally designed for the American military. You can imagine very useful to know exactly where things are and where your own people and things are. And the version that actually runs for stuff like our sports watches and other stuff is like a detuned version of that. It's not as accurate as the stuff that they use for the military, possibly understandably so. There are lots of other companies, organisations that have put loads of other satellites up that orbit around the Earth the whole time. So many, in fact, that they're now being regarded a bit like litter. And different phones, watches, trackers, etc. use different systems. So there is a variability depending on the actual system that your watch attaches to and is built to work with. There is also a big, I guess, kind of change in accuracy depending on how many of the satellites that your watch can actually see at any given time. So that might vary a little bit depending on where in the world you are. You know, a lot of these satellites are launched initially to start with in by American and European companies. So they tend to be a little bit biased in their coverage over American and European areas, although that is changing. It also varies on how many satellites that individual company that your watch or app talks to have actually put into the sky. The more they have there, the more chances your watch or phone has of connecting to more of them, the more accurate your reading is. As I mentioned, you need an absolute minimum of 3. So if you, at the beginning of the run and that the watch is telling you it's kind of waiting for that signal, it's because it needs at least 3 to work out exactly where you are with the geometry maths. So there's the number of satellites that are actually in the sky where you are in the world, but there is also the other side of things to bear in mind is that each satellite to watch connection that watch or phone needs is a direct line of sight. It's almost in a way like the satellite dish you might have in your garden if you have a Sky television. It needs a direct line of sight up into the sky to be able to communicate directly with that satellite. That's how it doesn't have a cable or anything. It is line of sight through the air that it communicates between those 2 devices, the satellite and your watch or phone. So anything that gets in the way of that direct line of sight connection will also cause disruption and inaccuracy in your data. So I have a wonderful woodland, picture of it behind me, near me. Running through woodland is notorious for messing around with your GPS signal. Tall buildings, so it's a bit infamous on the London Marathon course when you run around the Docklands area, which has lots of big skyscrapers. Again, a lot of buildings that are going to get in the way of that line of sight satellite connection. The other thing to bear in mind is that it's not just the different satellites that your watch might be connecting to. Your watch or your phone will also be set up with a certain frequency with which it's asking for that location and recording it. So the more often a watch or phone checks for that location, the more battery it's using. So there's a little bit of a balancing act with a lot of manufacturers to battery life versus GPS accuracy. It's not asking constantly where you are. It's taking readings at an interval. That might be several times a second. It might be once every few seconds. And then it's kind of stringing those little dots together to form your route. So I did a race a few years ago. A lot of the course was in woodland, which didn't help, but also it had a lot of real snaking around, crossing over. The route was trying to fit a good few kilometres into quite a small area, and as a result you were doing lots of little switchbacks and bits and pieces. And what it found was, over a lot of things, because it was taking that GPS reading over a small but still time intervals, not a constant read of your location, if I'd gone like that, it would maybe pick up a reading here, 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 here. So it wouldn't get all of the details of that wiggle that you did. So the reason I was sort of posting this is because a lot of people wonder, why, for example, is my phone telling me a different stat to my watch? Why is my treadmill telling me something different to what my watch tells me? So the first underlying principle is GPS is not 100% accurate, and the accuracy that you get varies due to circumstances that sometimes you can see, but sometimes you can't. In terms of, I guess maybe like phone versus watch GPS, it's worth having a little bit of a dig into how does your phone calculate your distance. So for example, I have a not particularly new but not that ancient iPhone. I don't leave the all of the systems on all the time, so it's not checking for GPS. It uses my step counter to do distance, so it does the number of steps that I take from the accelerometer in the phone, times it by an estimate of my stride length, and then really does guess distance. So as you can imagine, a small error in that stride length number multiplies quite quickly. So the devices, phones, some Fitbits, which do distance calculation based on your step count, are probably less accurate, more inaccurate than most GPS watches, just for comparison. On a treadmill, your watch, maybe if it's got a treadmill setting, again will be using the stride length versus total number of steps you've taken calculation. So whether or not that is more accurate than what your treadmill is telling you depends on how often the treadmill is calibrated correctly for distance. So quite a few different variables that start creeping in here. On race day, coursers who are ratified by the proper governing body, so UK Athletics or England Athletics for example, coursers should be measured, and they will be measured with a pretty good degree of accuracy and standardisation. So the London Marathon for example has the blue line, which is exactly marathon distance, 26.2 miles. Now in a crowded race you're not going to quite be following that blue line, there are going to be lots of other people getting in the way, but when people are kind of querying race distance, yes, Brighton Marathon, there have been some mess ups in terms of course measuring over the years, but generally speaking the measured course distance is the most accurate measurement, as I say, because your GPS is not 100% accurate. Hope that's useful. Sorry about the long and geeky rambling. Happy running.